I don't remember the last time I saw my name printed without hesitation. The subject line read, Thanksgiving Seating Chart. Final Draft. It came from my mother's HOA email, the one she uses for neighborhood updates and garden club reminders. No greeting, just the file. And one sentence. Can you print this for Brianna? The file opened, clean-centered. There was a color code at the bottom, gold for family blue, for +1s grey for service staff. I scrolled once. Table 1, Diane and Gerald Whitmore. Table 2, Nathan Carter and guest. Table 3, Brianna, Whitmore and Monica Hale. Table 4, videographer. Table 5, Pastor Collins. My name wasn't missing. It had never been entered. The cursor blinked in the reply box. I typed, should I? And then stopped. Backspaced. Let the field sit empty. I opened my messages instead. Brianna had already written. Mom said you're probably too busy anyway. Don't make it dramatic. No punctuation, no line break. The tone too practiced to be careless. I looked back at the chart. The names formed a kind of choreography. There were people I knew, people I had cooked for wrapped gifts for, stood beside at birthdays. But the arrangement flowed without me. Like a scene I'd been edited out of. Nathan's name was there. In gold. I clicked his contact without thinking. The last message I'd sent him was 2 weeks old, a forwarded article about houseplants improving sleep. He'd replied with a thumbs up. There were no recent calls, no voicemails. I leaned back in the chair, letting the weight of the moment stretch itself across the room like steam. I could still hear the printer from my mother's office. I used to sit on the carpet while it whirred, handing her each warm page like it mattered that I was the one touching them first. When Brianna got accepted to Berkeley, Mom printed the email 4 times, one for the fridge, one for her purse, one to send to Grandpa Paul, and one she laminated. When I got promoted, she asked me to send her the company logo so she could understand what it was I actually did now. I scrolled through the list again. There was a name highlighted in green, Monica Hale. Vegan option. She wasn't family. She was Brianna's college roommate, the one who wore scented oils that gave me migraines. Nathan had a seat. Monica had a seat. The videographer had a seat. I got up to refill my water, but the glass was still 3/4 full. I sat back down. The email still open, as if it might change if I looked at it long enough. I moved the mouse to close it, but didn't click. I thought of the sweater I'd lent Brianna 3 months ago, the pale lavender one with the elbow patches. She hadn't returned it. She'd worn it in a picture she posted standing beside my husband, holding a wine glass I recognized from our kitchen set. The caption read, Family Friday Vibes. I didn't comment. Nathan hadn't liked the photo either, but he hadn't said anything to me. I clicked through the seating chart once more. Each table had 6 names. I imagined where I might have been table 2 beside Nathan, or table 1 beside my parents, or maybe they'd thought I could help serve float between chairs, fill the silent spaces where real affection should have been. Don't make it dramatic. That phrase had been used on me more times than I could count. When I forgot to bring a dish to Thanksgiving once, because no one told me I was assigned one. When I cried in the guest room after finding out Brianna was given our grandmother's bracelet, because she's the one who wears gold. When Nathan and I announced our elopement, and Mom's first question was whether Brianna could still wear white to the reception. Don't make it dramatic. As if the only crime worse than being overlooked was noticing it. The cursor in the reply box blinked again. I watched it for a full minute, maybe longer. Then I close on the laptop. On the shelf beside my desk, there's a framed photo of my parents, Brianna and me. It was taken during my graduation from Northwestern. I'm in the center, cap in hand, smiling stiffly. Brianna's leaning into our mother, who's fixing a strand of her hair. My father's arm is around Oliver. Sometimes I wonder who took the photo. I don't remember asking anyone to. There's a ring dish on my desk, one I made in a ceramics class I signed up for last spring. It's chipped in one corner, faint glaze bubbles across the surface. I placed my wedding band in it months ago after Nathan stopped saying goodnight and started sleeping with his phone screen facing down. The ring has stayed there, untouched. I used to touch it when I felt unsure, just a brush of the finger to remind myself I belonged somewhere. I didn't reach for it this time. Brianna once told me I was too internal, that I overanalyzed everything. It was during a brunch I didn't want to attend but went to anyway. She ordered for both of us and sent my eggs back because they weren't aesthetic enough for stories. I'd brought up a podcast about cognitive empathy, and she'd rolled her eyes. You turn everything into a journal entry. That sentence still shows up sometimes when I'm brushing my teeth. I think it lives somewhere in the part of my brain that stores instructions I don't want to follow. There was a folder on my desktop labeled Thanksgiving Recipes. Claire. I opened it. Inside were PDFs, sweet potato baked turkey brine notes, a shopping checklist organized by aisle. The document properties showed they were last modified the previous year by Nathan. I deleted the folder without opening any of the files. There was nothing to plan. No dish to bring. No seat to fill. There's a difference between being forgotten and being left out. One hurts like absence. The other tastes like warning. I didn't message anyone that night. I didn't forward the seating chart. I didn't mention the email to Nathan when he got home. When he asked what I wanted to do for Thanksgiving, I said, "Nothing's been decided yet." He nodded, reached for the remote. I sat beside him, hands folded in my lap. The ring dish remained across the room, quiet in its corner. No one ever says you are no longer wanted. They just stop making space where you used to be. And sometimes that silence is louder than the words would have been. I used to believe that effort would translate to closeness. There was a year I flew back from a client meeting in Boston 12 hours earlier than scheduled. The project was behind. The client irritated, the budget still unresolved, but I moved the flight. Thanksgiving had always been my mother's priority, and I thought showing up at the table before the mashed potatoes would count for something. She looked up when I came through the door, brushing flour from her fingers. "You didn't need to rush for this," and then over her shoulder to Brianna, "Your sister's overdressed again." I still had my blazer on. No one mentioned the early arrival. No one asked if I'd eaten. Later that night, my father poured Brianna the last glass of wine from the bottle I'd brought, the one with the handwritten label. She swirled it once and made a face. "This is sharp," she said. My mother laughed. "Claire has always liked things that feel more expensive than they are." I'd told the story of that vineyard twice before. No one remembered. I tried again at Christmas. Brianna forgot a jacket at a party, one of those loft gatherings with music that trembled the furniture, and I drove 45 minutes across the city to pick her up. She waited outside in heels with a split on the back of her dress and mascara dotted along her cheekbone. I brought her water, kept the heater running. When we pulled up at our parents' house, Mom opened the door halfway and frowned. "You couldn't let her walk in by herself. Now the neighbors will think she was dropped off like a teenager." Brianna leaned her head against the window. I noticed she'd taken my scarf from the coat closet again. At the bridal shower they hosted for me, I wore the cream dress my mother insisted on. It hung heavy, too structured, but she said it was dignified. Brianna arrived 40 minutes late in satin green, dropped her handbag on the gift table, and kissed everyone's cheeks. "She's always been our spark," my father told the guests. "She brings the energy Claire doesn't." I stood by the door, holding a tray of petits fours. One guest, I think she was a colleague of Diane's from the church board, whispered that I had my mother's discipline. My mother turned slightly. "I suppose. Claire's always been the quiet one. Steady like furniture. That word stayed with me through the rehearsal dinner. At work, I once secured a 7-figure contract. My director sent flowers. I forwarded the email to my family group thread. My mother replied, "That's nice. Did you see the photo of Brianna at the gala? That neckline. She looked like royalty." No one acknowledged my message. I used to think it was my job to keep the peace, to leave space for others to bloom, to hold the edge of the frame so they could take center. But over time, the edge became the only place I knew how to stand. There's a photo in my parents' living room, a canvas print, family portrait taken years ago at some resort-style studio downtown. My mother wore pearls. My father's tie matched her blouse. Brianna stood between them, one hand resting on Dad's arm, the other on Mom's waist. I was placed beside her, a step farther out. The lighting was soft, but a glare from the window caught the glass. Half my face is lost in reflection. No one noticed. The frame stayed up. When I offered to retake it the following year, maybe something more natural, maybe outdoors, my father waved me off, too much hassle. And this one turned out fine. When Nathan and I hosted our first holiday dinner, I spent 3 days preparing. Cloth napkins folded into fans, hand-labeled place cards, rosemary in the rolls. My mother walked in, looked around once. "It's sweet that you try." That night, after everyone left, I found 2 lipstick smudges on the linen chairs. One belonged to Brianna, the other to a woman I barely knew, Monica, her friend from college, who had a laugh like champagne fizzing out of a bottle. Nathan thought I was overreacting when I blotted them out with a sponge. "You always expect gratitude," he said once. "Not everyone operates that way." I stopped correcting him. Sometimes I wonder if being overlooked was easier when I still believed it was unintentional, when I thought my quietness made me harder to see, not easier to exclude. But then there were the things that required decision. When the family sent out a shared holiday letter, the Whitmore Year in Review, they included photos of Brianna's trip to Costa Rica, her new apartment, and a paragraph about Nathan's promotion. I was mentioned in a bullet point. Claire's still doing well at her firm. I remember holding the letter under a lamp, tracing the typeface with my finger. Still doing well. Still working, still existing, as if being steady were the only thing I knew how to be. There was a dinner once, one of those obligatory restaurant gatherings, half a celebration, half a performance. The waiter took my order last. My father told him, "Don't worry, Claire's easy. She'll just have what Brianna's having." I didn't correct him. They brought 2 identical plates. Brianna sent hers back. Mine stayed. I think that was the night I stopped asking for what I wanted. Not out of bitterness, out of something quieter, like trying not to speak in a room where no one is listening. My wedding album has one photo of just me. It wasn't staged. I'd stepped away for a moment and turned toward the garden. The photographer caught it from behind a single frame before I stepped back inside. The light caught my shoulder. My face is turned away. Brianna once told me I looked most beautiful when I wasn't trying. She meant it as a compliment. The dress from that day is in my closet, sealed in a garment bag with a stitched label, Mrs. C. Whitmore. A name I've never used. I thought about donating it once, but there's a tear in the hem from where my heel caught on the stone path. I left it there, unmended. Maybe not everything needs to be fixed. Some things are truer when they're frayed. I never said anything about the envelope. It arrived a month before Brianna's wedding, addressed in gold cursive to Mr. and Mrs. Nathan Carter. I turned it over 3 times before opening it, half expecting my own name to appear inside, tucked somewhere in the folds. It didn't. The front of the card had a sketch of hydrangeas and the words, "You're invited," embossed in pearl. Inside, "Please join us as we celebrate the wedding of Brianna Whitmore and James Thatcher." There was a line for meal selection. There was no line for +1, no mention of me. I left the card on the kitchen table beside the water glass Nathan used every morning, the one with the slight crack at the rim he refused to throw out. He didn't comment on the invitation. He just circled chicken and moved on. Brianna later explained it was the printer's mistake. "Don't be weird about it." Mom said, "Well, technically you took Nathan's name, so it still includes you." My father didn't respond. He only raised his eyebrows the way he does when women speak for too long. I RSVP'd online without writing anything in the comments. At the wedding, they sat me near the back. Not with family, not quite with strangers either. Monica waved at me from her seat closer to the altar. Someone whispered that the flowers were from Holland. I studied the programs instead, printed on recycled paper, with photos of the couple laughing in places I had never been invited. During the reception, they played a slideshow. Childhood pictures, school awards, vacations. I appeared once in a group shot at Yosemite, cut off at the shoulder. My mother leaned toward the woman beside her. Claire's very dependable. A bit quiet, but dependable. That word again. A placeholder. Like I'd been assigned the role of structural support. Not interesting enough to frame, not absent enough to notice. Just present. Lightly. Quietly. When I turned 30, I received a call at work. I thought it might be from my team. Instead, it was my mother's voice. I almost forgot to say Brianna's being featured in Style Plus Story. Something about power wardrobes. You should see the blazer she picked. She didn't mention my birthday until the end of the call. "Oh, and happy 30. That's a big one. Have you thought about Botox yet?" "It's preventative now." I thanked her, then sat at my desk and looked at the message I'd drafted to Nathan about dinner plans. I deleted it without sending. There's a necklace in my jewelry box. Silver oval locket. Worn down on the edges, it belonged to my grandmother. She gave it to me the year I got accepted into Northwestern. "This is for when you feel invisible," she said. "It's small, but it holds weight. I used to wear it on days I wanted to be remembered. One morning I reached for it and found the box empty. I asked Mom if she'd seen it. She paused. Brianna borrowed it. She needed something subtle for her work headshot. You wouldn't mind. She wore it to the gala that weekend. I recognized the clasp. In the photo posted online, the locket caught a glint of stage light. Beneath the post, Mom commented, stunning, "You shine like you were born to." No one asked for it back. I once heard my father refer to me as the one who knows how to keep the house running. He meant it as praise, I think. Like being invisible was a skill I had cultivated into usefulness. When I organized their 40th anniversary dinner, I spent weeks designing the menu, hand-painted the place cards, created a playlist with their favorite jazz standards. At the end of the night, my mother clinked her glass and stood up. "I just want to thank everyone who helped, especially Brianna." The flowers were her idea. I stood beside the kitchen door, folding napkins. That was the night I learned how to vanish in plain sight. It doesn't require silence, just repetition. Eventually, people assume the quiet is your native tongue. Nathan once told someone, Claire's low maintenance. He was smiling when he said it, handing them a drink I poured. They both laughed like it was something to aspire to. Low maintenance, like a reliable appliance. You don't notice it unless it stops working. I've stopped trying to explain what it feels like to occupy a space without being part of it. There are no words for that kind of displacement. It isn't dramatic. It isn't cruel. It's diluted like over-steeped tea. Something once vibrant now, only vaguely bitter. The week Brianna closed on her new condo, we received a group email about her housewarming. Mom offered to bring deviled eggs. Dad offered chairs. I offered to bring wine. No one replied to my message. When I arrived, the wine sat unopened on the edge of the table, next to 6 others that were corked and chilled. Mine was warm, untouched. Someone had written Brianna's blend on the label with a gold marker. It wasn't mine. Later that night, I found the bottle in the trash. Still sealed. I took the locket back from her the following month. No confrontation. Just removed it from her bathroom counter after she left for work. She never mentioned it missing. It hangs in my closet now, not with my jewelry, but looped around the hanger of my oldest sweater, the one I wore during finals week, stretched at the sleeves, a little pilled at the cuffs. Nathan once called it a retirement blanket. I kept wearing it anyway. There are things we carry that no one else sees, things that don't announce their weight, but shift our balance all the same. Sometimes it's a sentence. Sometimes it's a name that never appears. Sometimes it's an object borrowed, quietly returned without ceremony, and placed exactly where you can find it, because no one ever expected you'd notice it missing. And maybe that's the part that stays longest. Not the silence, but the certainty that no one expected it to matter to you. Some moments don't shatter, they unfold in silence like fabric, tearing under slow tension. The dinner had been arranged without consultation, a table reservation under my name, but not by my hand. I received the message from my mother with the subject line, "Your birthday Thursday works. No question mark in the body, just an address and time." I replied, "Fine, and nothing else." When I arrived, the hostess smiled with the kind of recognition that belongs to frequent diners or relatives of the planner. "Party's already seated." "Right this way, Mrs. Carter." I didn't correct her. They were already there. My parents seated across from 2 empty chairs. The lighting cast an even glow too soft to expose anything, but just bright enough to make you feel observed. My father raised his glass slightly, then lowered it without speaking. My mother gestured toward the seat beside her. "We weren't sure if you'd wear something more festive." I looked down at my navy blouse. The fabric was smooth, the collar ironed. I hadn't worn anything with sequins since my wedding rehearsal. "They have your favorite sparkling water," she continued, placing the menu in front of me. Brianna called ahead. Her absence at the table hadn't really. I smoothed the napkin across my lap. Nathan wasn't there either. I assumed traffic. I assumed work. I assumed so many things that I didn't notice what was missing from the assumptions themselves. The waiter brought bread and asked if we'd like to wait before ordering. My mother shook her head. "No need. Claire's always decisive." I ordered the pasta. My father asked for steak. My mother declined the dessert menu in advance. We hadn't yet spoken of the reason for the dinner. "It's a blessing," she said, cutting her butter knife clean through the crust of bread. "To have a daughter who never causes problems." So rare now. My fork rested beside the plate. Brianna arrived 10 minutes later. She walked in without hesitation, red dress pressed smooth against her frame, hair curled with deliberate asymmetry, not too perfect, just enough to look undone. A performance of effortlessness, the kind of entrance that leaves you unsure whether you've been waiting or merely paused. Nathan followed. Her hand grazed his back as they moved between tables. Oh, we bumped into each other in the parking lot. Total coincidence. She didn't look at me. He did briefly and then sat beside me like he always had, like nothing had changed. His jacket was too new. The sleeves hadn't wrinkled yet. He reached for the water glass and filled it halfway. The silence across the table folded inward. My mother smiled. Now we can really begin. The waiter returned and the table moved as it always had, menus lifted, side dishes chosen, wine accepted. Nathan touched my shoulder once, a small practiced motion. His palm was warm, but his fingers didn't settle. We should have ordered for you, my father said to Brianna, but you're usually unpredictable. Oh, not tonight, she replied. I'm being consistent these days. She reached for the breadbasket and tore a piece with slow care. I noticed her ring finger was bare. No jewelry except a delicate gold necklace, one I'd seen in our mother's drawer before. I had once asked to borrow it for a conference. The request had been misplaced. Halfway through the meal, my mother lifted her glass. A toast, she declared. To Claire, 32 years of stability and success. The word stability lingered like steam. Not quite a compliment, not quite a correction. My father added, "You've made us proud." I nodded, not because I believed them, but because the alternative would require more air than I had to spare. That was when Brianna stood. She folded her napkin neatly, as though setting the stage for something fragile. I wasn't going to say anything yet, she began, and her voice carried across the linen like a pin sliding into skin, but I figured this is the right moment. She placed a hand gently against her abdomen, the gesture not dramatic, but rehearsed. I'm pregnant. My mother gasped. The kind that's too light to be grief, too sharp to be joy. My father blinked 3 times. Well, my mother breathed. The timing is unusual. But a grandchild. She said it twice, a grandchild. The fork in my hand paused in midair. I hadn't taken a bite since the appetizer. I'm happy for you, I heard myself say. The words were shaped like civility. Their taste never reached my mouth. Then Brianna turned toward me. There's more. The room remained the same. The light didn't flicker. The waiter didn't hesitate. The background hum of other tables continued. But something subtle shifted like a coat removed quietly from a hook that was meant to carry its weight forever. Nathan is the father. She said it as if naming a sponsor, as if announcing a merger, as if this was a structured reorganization and I had simply been reassigned. We're together now. My mother didn't drop her glass. She placed it gently on the coaster and exhaled through her nose. I suppose that explains the silence. My father looked toward Nathan, but said nothing. Brianna reached for her water. We didn't mean for it to happen. It just did. Nathan didn't correct her. My hand moved toward my lap, instinctively seeking the ring I hadn't worn since July. It wasn't there. I felt the indentation on my skin, though thin, soft, permanent, in a way metal never was. Brianna's voice landed on the table again. We'll raise the baby together. You don't have to worry about anything. We've got it covered. We. A pronoun with new boundaries. I studied the candlelight catching the edge of my spoon. No one asked me anything. No one explained. I didn't ask how long. I didn't ask why. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my napkin or stand too quickly. I didn't demand an apology. I didn't demand the past. Instead, or watched the space between their chairs. I noted how his foot tilted slightly toward hers. I noticed how her voice shifted higher when she said Abby the way it always did when she thought she was winning. My mother cleared her throat. Well then, a new chapter. My father nodded once. No one looked at me. And I didn't correct them, because sometimes the most undeniable thing isn't a shout or a slap. It's the way a room keeps moving as if you weren't in it at all. And somehow that's louder than anything else. Some endings don't announce themselves, they just stop asking for your presence. I left my napkin folded neatly on the edge of the plate. I rose from the table without brushing the chair back too far, without gathering attention. No one stopped me. No one followed. In the restroom, the mirror caught me without forgiveness. Fluorescent light hummed overhead. I looked at the outline of myself the way one looks at a coat, left hanging too long, familiar, functional, unmissed. My lipstick had faded unevenly, one cuff damp where the water had splashed earlier. A woman stepped in, glanced at me, then at her own reflection, adjusted an earring, left. The door clicked shut behind her like a sentence that didn't require punctuation. I pressed both palms against the cold porcelain of the sink, not because I needed support, but because I wanted to be still. The door didn't open again. No one asked where I was. I stayed until I heard silverware reset and glasses lifted outside the wall. Then I left. The air was colder than I expected. My coat was still on the back of my chair, but I didn't return for it. When I got home, Nathan's jacket was on the couch, sleeves folded like arms at rest. His shoes pointed slightly inward beneath the bench. I didn't touch them. I went into the bedroom, took a small duffel from the top shelf, filled it with 4 days' worth of clothes. Nothing fancy. Comfortable sweaters, 2 pairs of jeans, a wool scarf I had bought last fall and never worn. In the bathroom, I wrapped my toothbrush in a napkin and placed it inside my bag. My phone charger, a bottle of facial cleanser, and the locket went in next. I zipped the bag slowly, checking nothing twice. On the windowsill, I set the wedding band, not balanced on its edge, not tucked away, just placed flat, in view, intentionally still. I didn't leave a note. He wouldn't need one. At Megan's place, she opened the door and didn't speak. She stepped aside and I walked in. The guest room smelled like lavender dryer sheets and old books. The bedspread had a stitched seam that ran crooked down the middle. She had left a glass of water on the nightstand and a folded towel on the edge of the bed. Nothing else. No questions. I slept through the morning. The next day I changed all my passwords. Bank email, cloud storage. I sorted documents into folders with new names, legal, financial, archived. I moved our wedding photos into a hard drive, labeled only with a date. I didn't delete them. I wrote 1 email, subject preceding body. It's time. I signed it with my full name. Meredith Hale replied 2 hours later. Understood. We'll begin with asset tracing and account access. Call me when you're ready. No exclamation points, no condolences, only function. I didn't call. I opened my phone gallery and scrolled without pausing. There were photos of Nathan and me in restaurants mostly taken by waiters. Smiles angled toward each other, glasses raised, hands too close to be incidental. In every photo, I could see the pause between us. A slight lean, a shoulder turned just off center, like trying to mimic intimacy from memory. I archived them without ceremony. On social media, I didn't change my name. I didn't post a quote about growth or healing. I didn't add a song to my stories. I removed our anniversary from the calendar. I changed my emergency contact. When I opened the drawer in Megan's kitchen, I found her set of mugs, each one different. One said morning person eventually in blue cursive. I chose the one with a chipped rim and no message. The coffee inside cooled quickly. I didn't reheat it. Nathan texted once. "Are you safe?" I read it 3 times, then turned the phone face down. He didn't write again. I remembered a cardigan I'd left draped over the back of the office chair, the one he used when I wasn't home. I imagined it still there, sleeves stretched, collar folded under. It had a faint perfume from the dry cleaner, lavender and starch. I didn't want it back. There was a file in my inbox from Meredith, an intake form, a timeline, an initial draft of a financial affidavit. I filled it out without commentary. Marital length, income bracket, property breakdown, a blank box labeled reason for dissolution. I typed 2 words, irreparable breach. I printed it, signed it, scanned it back. At night, I stared at the ceiling of Megan's spare room and recited names in my head. Places. Grocery lists. Not memories. Things without echo. When Megan offered wine, I shook my head. "There's white in the fridge," she said anyway. In case. She didn't ask why I'd left. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't mention Brianna. She folded my laundry once and didn't fold my underwear. That was enough. I walked past the ring dish every day, the one she kept near the sink. Her rings were stacked in 3s, stacked like she'd never lost any. I didn't place mine there. I let it stay on the windowsill of a house I no longer called home. There's a kind of silence that isn't emptiness. It's discipline, precision, the absence of sound because nothing needs to be said, because speaking would require explanation, and explanation would suggest I owed clarity to the people who wrote me out loud. I never raised my voice. I never begged. I only walked out of the frame. And this time, I didn't leave space for re-entry. I used to think small spaces would make me feel contained. Turns out they make other voices quieter. The guest room wasn't mine, but it didn't try to pretend it was something else. The closet held a few spare hangers. The lamp had a dull orange tint that softened the corners of the wall. The bed creaked when I turned, but didn't resist. There was only one window. It looked out onto a parking lot where the pavement cracked near the edges. A broken white line separated 2 spaces that no one parked in. In the morning, the light slid across the floor in a single stripe like a bookmark left on the wrong page. Megan left a spare key on the counter. "If you're going to stay more than a few nights, install your own lock," she told me, handing over a set of tools wrapped in a grocery bag. "You don't have to explain. Just make it yours." I installed it the next day. The drill bit slipped twice. My fingers left shallow dents in the wood grain, but the bolt clicked when I tested it. That sound, a lock engaging, held more comfort than anything soft. I unpacked slowly. 1 drawer for tops, 1 for pants. The smallest held socks and a necklace I hadn't worn in years. I didn't bring any shoes that required straps, only flats and 1 pair of boots. On the nightstand I placed a mug with no handle. The ceramic was slightly warped, the rim uneven. I'd bought it at a craft fair years ago. Nathan never liked it, said it looked unfinished. I kept it near the lamp. I didn't drink from it. I just let it stay there. I covered the tiny dining table with an old tablecloth I found in a storage box. The stitching was uneven, hand-done, with initials in the corner I could barely read anymore. It had belonged to my grandmother. I hadn't planned on bringing it, but I tucked it between sweaters without thinking. On top of it, I placed a sprig of dried lavender in a glass jar that once held spaghetti sauce. I didn't remove the label. I liked the way the torn edge curled under itself. The first night I cooked, I burned the rice slightly. Not enough to ruin it, just enough to fill the air with a faint, toast-like smell. I didn't open a window. The silence here didn't press on me the way it used to. It didn't fill in with imagined questions or explanations. It just stayed still, a stillness that let me move inside it. Megan worked late most evenings. When she got home, she sometimes nodded toward my door. "You holding up?" I nodded back. Nothing more was needed. I turned off notifications. I checked my email in batches. Meredith sent over early drafts of the asset sheet. I reviewed them without reading the notes. She already knew what to do. "My mother called once. I assume you're staying with Megan. Just tell me if we should keep your name on the Christmas rotation." I didn't answer. The voicemail ended without a tone. My father didn't reach out. Brianna posted a picture of herself with a bowl of fruit balanced on her stomach. The caption said something about growth in unexpected places. I didn't open the comments. One evening, Megan came in with a stack of old frames she didn't want anymore. "Take what you like." I chose one, wooden, slightly splintered in the corner. No glass. I found an old photo in the bottom of my bag, folded once. A picture someone else had taken me seated on a park bench, turned slightly sideways. My hair was pulled back, my hands folded in my lap. I wasn't smiling. But there was sun on my shoulder. I pinned it to the wall with a thumbtack. The only art I brought. I drank tea every morning from a chipped cup. The saucer never matched. I stopped stirring sugar into it. The spoon left a mark anyway, a thin ring on the table that I didn't wipe immediately. At night, I left the hallway light on, not because I was afraid of the dark, but because it drew a line across the door, and I liked the way it made a border between here and not here. There's something instructive about hearing only your own footsteps, something steady about moving through a space that no one else has memorized. One afternoon, I found a note Megan had taped to the fridge: "Buy more eggs. Claire probably won't eat the ones we have." She wasn't wrong. I always avoided the last two. At the hardware store, I bought a new houseplant, a small pothos with a plastic tag that said, "Hard to kill." I placed it by the sink. It leaned toward the light without needing coaxing. When the heat made a ticking sound in the ceiling, I listened instead of correcting it. The mail arrived without my name on it. Catalogs, bills, promotions, all addressed to Megan. I didn't add myself to the system. I liked knowing the world had to search for me, and I wasn't in a hurry to be found. There's a difference between being remembered and being needed. I started hearing from them when my absence began to cause problems, not silence. The first call came on a Wednesday morning. I didn't answer. Megan glanced at the screen. "Diane?" I nodded once. "Want me to throw the phone in the freezer?" She smiled. I didn't. The voicemail read like a script someone had printed off a family PR manual. "Brianna's not doing well. She's stressed. You two should talk. It's not healthy to hold grudges. Families find a way." I didn't listen to it twice. The next was a text from my father. Short, punctuated. "People are asking why you're not in the Christmas card. Let me know if you're coming by for photos this weekend. No mention of the birthday. No mention of the table. Just the card, the image, The impression of wholeness. There was a time when I'd have worn whatever they asked. A neutral blouse, the good pearls, maybe even that burgundy sweater I never liked, just to keep the tones warm and classic. But I didn't reply. Later that day, Nathan tried. "We should talk. Things got out of hand. Let's just fix it before it's too late." Before it's too late, not... I was wrong, not I hurt you, just a timeline, a fear of consequences. I stared at the message for a while. The way his name lit up on the screen still triggered a reaction in my hands, a tightness in the joints like preparing to brace. He sent another. "Are you really going to burn everything down over one mistake?" I turned off the phone. Plugged it in behind the bookshelf. At work, someone asked if I'd be attending the winter gala with Nathan. They'd seen the guest list. My name wasn't on it. I smiled faintly and pointed to a coffee stain on my file folder. "Guess I've been replaced." They laughed, thinking it was a joke. Later, I found the envelope tucked among junk mail. Cream cardstock, embossed in silver. "You are cordially invited to the Whitmore Partners Annual Gala. Nathan Carter, +1, Brianna Whitmore." The ink hadn't smudged. The seal hadn't been broken. I placed it between pages of a paperback I never finished. 2 days later, Diane emailed again. "You've made your point, but this isn't helping anyone. Brianna's pregnancy is delicate. Stress affects the baby. You don't want that on your conscience. Not a question, not a check-in, just guilt packaged in soft grammar." I poured water into the kettle, let it boil longer than needed. That evening, Megan passed me the remote. "You should pick. Everything I choose is either murder or baking." I chose neither. Later that week, my cousin Ellie messaged me on Instagram. "Are you okay? You weren't tagged in the family photos. Did something happen?" I stared at the photo. 23 people coordinated outfits, the lake behind them. My mother in the center. Nathan standing just slightly off to the right. Brianna's hand resting on the curve of her stomach. My father holding a sign that read, "Grateful for every branch." My face didn't belong there anymore. Maybe it never had. I clicked out. I didn't delete the app, just muted the notifications. The last contact came in a letter from the office of Diane's company, a courtesy copy of the holiday newsletter. "This year we celebrate milestones. Brianna's engagement, the upcoming grandchild, and the expansion of Whitmore & Co. No mention of my name, not even under staff highlights. I turned the paper over. On the back was a quote, "Family is where your story begins." I folded it once, then once more. I didn't tear it. Megan noticed the stack growing on the counter. "You gonna burn those at some point, or just let them guilt rot?" I didn't answer, but I placed the stack in a drawer, top shelf, right next to the screwdriver I used to install the deadbolt. There was something instructional about every message, every request, a pattern too consistent to be accidental. None of them asked how I was sleeping, if I had enough to eat, if the mornings were harder than the nights. No one offered a chair. Just questions about visibility. "Will you be coming to the family service? Brianna says she's open to a conversation. Your absence is becoming obvious. Don't make this your identity. We're trying. Why won't you?" Because trying isn't the same as seeing. I stopped responding. The phone rang less, then not at all. I hung a calendar on the wall, one with no family birthdays circled. I crossed out the days in pencil. I let them forget me, and in that space I began to remember myself. I no longer wait for the sound of someone else's key. There's a rhythm to quiet that only shows itself when no one is listening. I wake before the sun, not because I have to, but because the silence feels undisturbed then. The coffee tastes clearer in the early stillness. 1 scoop, not 2. I don't stir the sugar anymore. I run now, not far and not fast, just enough to feel the pavement steady under my shoes to hear my breath without interruption. There's a neighborhood cat who follows for a block and then loses interest. I don't call it by name, I never asked. The clothes I wear have changed. Not new ones, just different ones. The blazer that always made Diane say too severe for family dinner hangs in my entryway. I wear it on purpose now. No occasion needed. The marketing job came by accident. A local bakery wanted someone to write their seasonal campaign. Megan forwarded the email with a note. "This sounds like something you'd do with your eyes closed." I wrote back, "I prefer them open now." I never sent a resume. Just walked in, took a paper menu from the counter, and circled 3 lines I thought could be better. "You work in branding, no. I used to work in making things invisible. You want part-time or freelance, I want whatever. Doesn't require apologizing for being clear." They hired me. The first day I brought my own mug. It's chipped near the rim, one of the old ones from my grandmother's kitchen. No one noticed, and that felt like peace. The office smells like cinnamon and printer ink. There are no nameplates on the desks. On Saturdays I take a pottery class. No one there asks what I do for a living. They call me Claire, and that's enough. I make small bowls, nothing symmetrical, nothing perfect, just things that hold things. Elliot Brooks was at a networking event for local freelancers. He remembered me from years ago when I edited his pitch deck during a snowstorm. "You caught a typo in my mission statement. I've never forgotten that. You still use that mission." No. I rewrote everything. He asked if I wanted coffee. I nodded. We walked to the second cafe down the block, not the trendy one where people pretend not to look at each other. He didn't ask personal questions. He looked at my business card for a long time. "You changed your name?" "Yes." "Good." We talked about fonts and how overused the word authentic had become. He didn't reach across the table. I didn't pretend to laugh. When I came home that evening, I placed the business card he gave me in the drawer with my grandmother's measuring spoons. Not because it meant anything, just because I wanted to put it somewhere that held weight. I've stopped answering unknown numbers, not out of fear, just lack of interest. The people who truly need to reach me already know not to call without context. There's a sign on my door now, handwritten in faded ink, "Don't knock unless it's kindness." A delivery man once smiled when he saw it. That was enough. I've taped a picture to my refrigerator when I took on a walk alone. It's of a wooden door, cracked open, with nothing behind it but blue sky. No figures. No shoes on the mat. Just the possibility of space. Megan dropped by last week. She saw the photo and paused. Looks like freedom. Looks like no one is waiting for me to explain. I've grown fond of folding towels the way I like them. Not the hotel roll. Just once down the middle, then again. No one corrects me here. When the insurance form came in the mail with the old name still printed, I didn't sigh. I just crossed it out with a blue pen and wrote in the one I now claim without ceremony. Diane sent a group email. Subject line, Easter head count. I wasn't in the thread. Megan was. Somehow Brianna thought it made sense. Nathan hasn't reached out since January. He posted a picture of the baby. There were no tags, just the caption, "Our little beginning." I looked at it for less than a minute. Then I opened a new tab and searched for studio spaces in my area. I didn't delete the picture. I didn't save it either. This morning I donated the last set of wedding china. The clerk at the shop asked, "Are you sure?" "Completely. You want a tax receipt?" "No need. There's a drawer in my kitchen with only things I use. One pair of scissors, one lighter, one napkin ring from a set we never unbolt. Sometimes I close the door without locking it, not because I forgot, because I choose when it's safe. There's no ritual to this new version of myself, just small decisions that no longer ask for approval. I don't owe anyone an explanation for the way I fold my mornings or who I let into my afternoons. The apartment is still quiet, but the quiet isn't heavy anymore, and I close the door now with all my hand, not my heart. I always thought closure would come with a sound, something definitive, maybe a click-a-crack, a word that stuck, but it came quieter than that. Just a folded paper, uncreased hands, and no breath held. The envelope sat on the edge of the kitchen counter for 3 days. I didn't seal it. There was no point. Meredith would handle the delivery. She always did things neatly, without commentary. That was what I needed. No condolences, no questions, just ink and movement. Inside was the deed transfer. I gave Nathan the rest of the house. Not because I forgave him, not because he deserved it, but because I no longer needed to share space with a memory that never made room for me. The garden, the attic, the hollow door frame with the tiny mark from the day I measured myself in socks. He could have it. It had never really been mine. I slipped in one sheet of paper alongside it. No date, no signature, just a sentence in blue ink: "I release you," and myself. I never licked the envelope, just pressed the flap gently closed and slid it into the folder. Let the lawyer handle the binding. I'd done the unbinding alone. At court, I was the only one on my side of the room. Meredith sat behind me, but a row back, like she understood I wanted the shape of solitude, not the weight of company. Nathan didn't show. His signature had arrived by courier days before. Uncontested. The clerk mumbled. Mutually filed. No dependents. I signed where they pointed. My pen didn't shake. The final page curled slightly in the corner, as if even the paper resisted the idea of permanence. I pressed it flat once, then handed it back. Outside, the wind lifted the hem of my coat, but didn't move me. The building looked the same as it had when I was 18 and came to file a business license I never used. I remembered how proud I'd been then, holding that certificate like proof of possibility. This time, I left with nothing in my hands and still felt more certain. On impulse, or maybe instinct, I crossed the street and stepped into the civil office next door. The woman at the counter wore readers on a beaded chain and had a mug that said, "World's okayest, admin." She asked for my ID, my birth certificate, and the reason for the change. Legal name update, I wrote. New name, Claire Ellis. Ellis wasn't a fresh start. It was a remembering. My grandmother's name stitched on aprons, scribbled on grocery lists, carved in the underside of a breadboard that still lives in my kitchen. She used to tuck wild mint in her pockets and whisper, "You don't have to explain your piece to anyone." When I handed over the form, the woman looked up. Ellis. That's a good name? I know. It will take weeks for the system to catch up. DMV Bank, Social Security. But I already knew who I was. The paper just confirmed what the silence had taught me. At the exit there was a bin marked "Secure Shred." I paused, reached into my wallet and pulled out the last business card that bore Whitmore. Pale grey serif, font a number that no longer rang. I dropped it in without folding. The wind didn't pick up. No cinematic cue, just the sound of the shredder waking up for 2 seconds, then stopping. Back at the apartment, I opened the mailbox out of habit. Junk flyers, a utility bill, and 1 envelope from the community management office. Tucked inside was a new nameplate for the mailbox, C. Ellis, Apt 3B. No one else would notice. No ceremony. But I peeled the backing and pressed it into place with both thumbs. The adhesive stuck better than expected. The old plate was gone, no residue. Later that night, Megan texted a meme about leftover rice. I laughed. Not the kind that fills a room, the kind that stays in your throat and softens your spine. She followed up. Did it go through? Yes. Feel different. Not different. Just done. There's a kind of power in not explaining. I used to think stories had to be told to be real, but some endings don't need to be heard to be true. They just need to be chosen. There's a small mirror in my hallway, one I bought from a thrift store 3 streets over. I passed it twice before buying it. The frame is chipped. The reflection is slightly warped, but it holds my face now. Just mine. No initials carved in the back. No shadow behind the glass. Just light bending still. And in that slant of reflection, I see a woman who didn't scream, didn't beg, didn't defend, she just stood, signed her name, and let go. I don't feel the need to reply right away anymore. Messages come in, some I read, most I don't, and they sit. Quietly, like coats left on a hallway chair that no one's in a rush to wear again. The teapot whistles low today. Not sharp, not urgent. I let it simmer longer than I used to. The old porcelain cup, the one with the faint chip on the rim, fits just right between my palms. I don't hold it like I'm waiting for warmth. I hold it like I've earned it. I fold the tablecloth slowly. The lace edge has unraveled in places. I could mend it, but I don't. Some things look more honest, frayed. There's a new envelope on the counter. Utility bill due next week. Beneath it, a thank you note from the shelter. Your time means more than you know. I put it on the fridge with the blue magnet shaped like a cat. It was the only magnet left when I moved in. I've kept it stubbornly, like a quiet kind of loyalty. I check my phone. No missed calls. No new texts. No social alerts. For once, the silence doesn't feel like a wound. It feels like a clean late. There's a knock at the door. 2 short. 1 pause, 1 soft tap. I already know who it is. Elliot never presses too hard. He holds out 2 paper cups. One's decaf. He murmurs without expectation. I nod, take the warmer one, and step aside. No invitation spoken, none needed. We sit not across from each other, but side by side on the old bench I pulled from the thrift store last fall. He brushes a crumb off the cushion before sitting. He glances at the books stacked on the shelf. Still organizing. Still pretending I will. I answer. We don't laugh, but there's air between us now, not tension. Breathing space. Outside, the sky doesn't impress. Just a soft grey with that clean light that makes nothing sparkle, but nothing heavy either. I lean back, eyes half closed. The kind of posture people misread as tired, but really, it's just content to be still. I ran into your sister last week, he says, like he's mentioning weather. I don't ask what she said. I don't need to know. People like Brianna speak in performance. I've stopped buying tickets. She looked surprised, he adds, when I didn't ask about Nathan. My hand tightens slightly around the cup. Not enough to burn. Just enough to register I'm still here. He doesn't press, just hands me a napkin, the kind you'd grab from a street vendor. You've got something on your cheek. I wipe it off, whatever it is. Maybe nothing. Later that evening, we walked to the park together, not close, not apart, just two people in parallel motion. The outdoor film screening is already starting. Folding chairs rustle, children laugh in the dark. I spot a woman 3 rows up with hair like my mother's tight, precise silver streaks tucked into a clip. But she turns and it's no one I know. Elliot passes me a cookie from his jacket. I don't like oatmeal. I don't like raisins. We trade without needing to. We don't stay long. We don't need to. I nod at him as we part ways. No promise to call. Just a shared moment, unclaimed. Back home, I unlace my shoes slowly. They leave a faint trace on the mat dust from the park path. I don't shake it off. Just watch it settle. In the hallway, the wall remains mostly bare, but one frame has stayed, a simple sheet of paper aged slightly at the corners, ink in my own handwriting. Some things bloom after fire. I don't remember when I wrote it. Maybe during that week, when I still believed closure came in letters. Maybe after. The ink has faded, but the words haven't. I open the cupboard. The tea tin is almost empty. I scoop the last spoonful without hesitation. Tomorrow I'll get more. Or maybe not. Maybe I'll find something new. On the windowsill, there's a pressed leaf inside a clear envelope. Pale, brittle, but with every vein intact. I never labeled it. I don't need to. I know it was from the morning I walked away. The buzzer rings once someone delivering menus, probably. I don't get up. I don't need more options tonight. I sit on the edge of the bed, brush my fingers across the old scarf I never wear, but can't throw out. The hem is fraying, and one small coffee stain near the edge hasn't faded with time. It doesn't need to. It reminds me I once spilled, but still kept going. I reach into the drawer and take out the new ID card. Claire Ellis. No middle name. No hyphen. Just space. I hold it up to the light, then slide it back in. My phone screen lights up. A calendar reminder for a birthday. Not mine. Not anyone I talk to now. I swipe it away. I open a book I've read before, this time page 70. There's a corner folded there. I unfold it. No note, just a sentence underlined. You don't owe anyone the shape of your healing. The room smells like the lavender soap I use for everything now. Dishes, clothes, sometimes just the air. I stand and walk to the window. The night isn't remarkable, but I leave the curtain open anyway. I place my hand on my stomach, not because anything's growing, but because I am. Quietly, without applause, without explanation.